Hello everybody and welcome to this week's bonus podcast where we are doing a classic character profile on the character of Gordon Clegg.
Gordon Clegg.
Gordon Clegg. Because, sadly, the actor Bill Kenwright died just recently a couple of weeks ago. And we realised we hadn't actually talked about Gordon that much on the podcast before, so we thought it would be a perfect time to do a little bit of a tribute. Go down memory lane. I say it's memory lane, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about today we haven't seen, but...
No.
We're not going to pretend we have, but we'll done some really good reading on Corrie and we'll try and recount it back to you in an informative and entertaining way. So let's see how we get on. Gemma, would you like to do a bit of a rundown of his vital stats for us first?
Not a lot of people know that his real name was actually Gordon Clegg.
No, it wasn't. Stop this. Stop it at once.
He was born on the 20th of May 1950. His parents were Ted Farrell and Betty Williams.
His real parents, spoiler.
No, his biological parents.
Yes.
And his adoptive parents were Les and Maggie Egg.
Stop it.
He had his half-sister, but we don't talk about that.
No, we don't. No
Nobody
more information.
Knows
who knows?
And he was married to Caroline Wilson in 1982, and he had a child called Peter Clegg in 1985. He first appeared on the 15th of April 1968. He last appeared on the 20th of April 2012.
Wow, so he was going between 1968 and 2012. He must have had like thousands of episodes in that time.
He was in 106 episodes.
106 episodes.
He was played by Bill Kenwright between 1968 and 1995, and he returned in 2012 for that final appearance. But he was also played by Jeffrey Leslie in 2002 to 2004.
I think it's Jeffrey Leasley.
I didn't know if that was a spelling
mistake.
mistake.
I think
was
it's
trying to let you off.
Sorry, no, I think
Normally,
it's Leasley.
I make a point of saying when you've made a mistake and you criticise me for
Yeah,
bringing it up.
sorry,
And this time I tried to smooth it over,
No.
so I'm never doing that again.
I think it's Jeffrey Leasley. He has been doing other things. I don't know how famous an actor he is, but I don't really know about that sort of stuff. But he's mostly Bill Kenwright. It was Jeffrey Leasley for about 3 episodes, so he's mostly Bill. And that's mostly what we're going to be talking about today. So Bill Kenwright, he had... we talked about his life a little bit on the podcast a few weeks ago when the news of his death broke, and he did it all, didn't he? He was an actor, he was a singer, he was a football chairman.
Yeah, I don't really know what that is.
I know. I was like,
is it just to being in charge of?
I think it just means you're in charge of the club,
but you don't tell them how to kick stuff. That's the manager.
I don't really know.
I think a football manager's like, right, lads. You
Formation.
got to get the ball down the other end.
Tackle the other players. No, I don't know whether he did that, but he was. I know that he was very beloved by the Evertonians, well, the fans of the football club.
Is it chairman the guy that does the lady that does the business things?
I think he did
do
we've
some
got
business, a sponsorship from.
Yeah.
Betty's Hot Pot.
Also very well known theatre producer. I think that to me, that's probably what I would automatically go to when they say, what does Bill Kenwright do? But we'll be talking all about that later. Before coming into Coronation Street, he had a little bit of a go at being a pop star. He was in a group called the Chevrolet, and then another group called Bill Kenwright and the Runaways. I love it when like the lead singer of a band says, "It's my band. I'm having my name in it, and you're just the rest of the band." Yeah, but it didn't go so well. So he went down the acting route, and he had roles in a few shows during the 60s, including Julius Caesar and Z-Cars, classic. And he was also in the ITV Play of the Week in 1967. But it was really Coronation Street where he made his big splash on the little screen in 1968. So, Gordon Clegg has got kind of an interesting and very kind of soapy backstory, hasn't he? That these days on Coronation Street, you probably wouldn't blink, or you wouldn't, go, what? So what? He's got a sorted past like this. But tell you what, it was proper scandalous back in the 60s, wasn't it? Do you want to kind of start us off with his sordid beginnings, scandalous beginnings?
Say that,
I know, I don't, not sordid.
So judgmental.
No. It was
1949. Betty gets up the duff.
Yeah, lovely Betty.
Can't believe it. Can you believe it? I can. I remember when she was young, she was a right girl. She became pregnant after a night with a wartime sweetheart called Ted. But then he goes back to his wife in Portsmouth, and she couldn't get hold of him, so she decides to give the baby, who she calls Gordon. Okay. Baby Gordon, up for adoption.
Very classic name back in the 1940s.
Oh, just imagine in the what they're called, It's not a crypt when you put babies in there when
Crib?
they're alive. No, like the bit where all the babies sit and you look at them through the glass.
The bit where the baby swaps and steals happen.
Yeah, the baby baby marketplace.
I don't know. Can you tell we're not parents?
Well, yeah, in the baby ward.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, you've got this so cute, yeah, but half of them are called Gordon. Right.
I like, speaking of names, what is it with Coronation Street and Ted? Because Betty's secret baby daddy was Ted, and Audrey's got a secret baby daddy called Ted as well, hasn't she? Gail's secret dad was Ted. Someone
called Ted has done wrong here.
Or there's a Ted that's really respected for being a bit of a player. But clearly,
you think it depends on whether it was a man or a woman, I suppose, that came up with this idea. So, she decides to give baby Gordon up for adoption, and Betty's sister Maggie's like, hey, you've got a baby, I don't have a baby and I want one. I've got married to Les 2 years ago and they told me I could never have kids, but they didn't say I couldn't steal one of yours.
Yeah.
And so they say, okay, cool.
Yeah, so they raised Gordon as their own, and as Gordon grew up, as far as he knew, he was the biological son of Les and Maggie. And he still stayed that way for a little while.
And Maggie Clegg was the one who was in charge of the shop.
Yes, yeah, she's
the blonde one.
Yeah.
And she was in the show before Betty arrived. Betty arrived as her sister and then sort of took over as the more significant character as time went on.
Yeah, the more significant sibling. Yeah, so the Cleggs came into the show in 1968, and Gordon at this point was an accounts clerk.
But hang on.
What?
None of this backstory is known to the viewers.
None of that backstory. No, we didn't know this.
All of the stuff we've just told you, nobody knows about this.
Yeah, don't go back in time to 1968 and tell them, please.
When you're watching this in 1968, Gordon is the biological child.
Well, this was how it was written.
Betty is his aunt.
It was very much a retcon, much like they like doing occasionally in Coronation Street now.
They did not even think of this idea.
No. Right? So he comes to staying at the Cleggs in 1968, and you can tell straight away that there's a bit of a tense relationship between him and his dad, because Les Clegg is a massive alcoholic, and again the name Les, Coronation Street,
bad.
Yeah, doesn't have quite a good reputation.
Also, Les Clegg, Clegg.
He didn't.
Not a good name, is it?
He wasn't in the show very much, and we've seen bits of the 60s, and I'm thinking we've possibly only seen maybe one episode
really
with Les in. No,
I don't even remember her being with an abusive man.
No, we didn't see much of it. I'd quite like to go back and watch a few bits of it, because some of the scenes that came up in 1968 sound like they were worth a watch. Because he basically.
Do you think he's Leslie or Lester Clegg?
Leslie. He's Leslie Clegg.
Leslie Clegg.
Yeah. So he's a massive drunk. He beats his wife up. Gordon, not so happy to be related to this man. So he thinks. So.
Well, he also probably gets the stick as well.
Well, maybe he does. So Albert Tatlock decides that Gordon needs a girlfriend. He's just come to visit them, and Albert's like, I'm gonna set you up with somebody. You know, Albert's good at that. You know, Valerie and Ken, and now he sets Gordon up with Lucille Hewitt, who is
her name's Lucille. Loose Heel.
Yeah, Loose Morals Hewitt, who she was living with. I think at this point Harry had died. Harry Hewitt, Lucy's dad. I can't remember if he hadn't at this point. It was not far off it.
Annie and
Jack,
so
I think exactly. Yeah, so she was known as being the teenager in Coronation Street's early
She was
years.
The only one they had.
Yeah, exactly. So Albert reckons that Gordon will be a perfect arm candy for Lucille, but Maggie doesn't approve of this, because basically she doesn't want Gordon to be getting intimate or just, platonically close with anybody nearby, because she's worried that Lucille and I guess others are going to find out about Les being an alcoholic. So she's really kind of pushing Gordon against doing that. On his 18th birthday, Gordon has a drink in the Rovers, and it seems like he's got a bit of a reputation as being a bit of an amby-pamby mummy's boy. So he decides that he's going to have the same drink as Ray Langton, the local roughy-tufty with the gorgeous shoulder-long length locks. But he's a builder, so you got to drink the same as a builder if you want to show your manliness.
That was a manly haircut back in the day.
I know,
so manly you can't be bothered to go to the hairdresser.
Yeah, too cool for that. So yeah, because Ray is kind of seeing Lucille at the same time as well, and Gordon's trying to stake his claim on her, saying, I drink beer too. I'm a man.
Delicious beer.
Maggie gets Annie to intervene, Annie Walker at the pub. to help keep Lucille away from Gordon. But Annie says, well, no, look, you're just smothering your son. Don't get me involved.
Imagine being accused of being interfering by Annie Walker.
Yeah, I know. Ultimate insult.
Wouldn't you just die?
Maggie tells her that Lucille is corrupting her son, and the pair have a bit of a fallout over it. So Gordon is still seeing Lucille at this point. I think she is pretty much two-timing him on and off with Ray Langton. I don't know. But Gordon's seeing her secretly. And meanwhile, Les's drinking is just getting worse and worse and worse. And this is the episode that I'd quite like to see. There's one episode, apparently, he comes home totally plastered to the shop where they're living. Like you said, they were running the corner shop. And he gets into a bit of a struggle with Maggie. Gordon has to pull him off of her, and it all gets very kind of physical. And Les goes down, hits a window display, and ends up in hospital. And while he's recovering in hospital, that's when he admits that he needs help, and he's admitted to a psychiatric hospital. He goes there for 2 years and never comes back to Weatherfield again. So he's literally in the show for a few months to say, alcoholism is bad. Now, we don't know what to do with you now. We don't want to show you recovering. Off you go.
No, being tipsy is fine, but being alcoholic is bad.
Yes. So Annie learns from Ina about Les being an alcoholic.
Because when all of this
goes on, and then the word spreads, and Annie's like, right, Lucille, I don't think you should be seeing Gordon actually, because she fears that alcoholism is hereditary.
Could be. How would you know?
Exactly. People who don't know these things back in the day. Lucille just runs out on her because she's so madly in love with Gordon. Later in the year, Gordon gets annoyed because Lucille starts flirting with this American GI. They always had GIs turning up in the Rovers in the late 60s, didn't they? This one was called Gary Strauss. Gordon ends up fighting with him for her, and Lucille says, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. I just wanted to get a reaction from you, because like I said, he really does have a bit of a reputation as being a wet blanket, and she wants to put a bit of fire into him. So they continue dating, but Gordon is still jealous of the time she's spending with Ray, because why not? She's going out with him as well. And he then decides, Gordon does, to go on a date with another girl himself. But he decides, no, this isn't for me. Lucille is the girl that I want. I'm going to marry her. And he proposes to her, and she accepts. Hooray! Maggie and Annie are not happy with this arrangement at all, and Gordon tells Maggie that he's just had enough of her. It's his life. He'll do what he wants with it. Good for him. So Maggie says, right, well, I'm just going to refuse to give you permission to marry Lucille then. And I think they were 18 at the time.
Well, he was 18 because he had a drink.
Oh, yeah, of course. Gordon was 18. I'm pretty sure Lucille was. But Maggie's like, well, I'm not going to let you marry her. So,
but it's probably back in the day.
Yeah, I think that the rules and the ages and everything were different.
Written permission from 3 adults.
Unless you want to elope to Gretna Green, which is what Lucille and Gordon concoct a plan to do.
We saw this episode,
we did see this episode. We absolutely saw this episode.
Was this on one of the DVDs, I suppose?
Yeah, this was on the 60s DVD. So they go to the train station, and basically
this was great.
They spend the episode...
Miss the train.
Yeah, they're missing the train. I think they miss it twice, and there's just some really nice dialogue throughout that episode as they
it's really fun
talk through, is this what we really want?
It's just fun watching them sitting out, out, and they have a cup of tea. I don't think they have a lot of money, do they? And they're trying to sort of buy a cup of tea.
So they're chatting over, what is this the right thing to do? Lucille ends up getting cold feet, worrying what Harry would say about what he would have said about what she's doing, and also worried about Gordon missing his exams. Can you just have a look on your phone when Harry Hewitt died? Was he dead at this point? Because I know that there was a bit where she was staying with Annie when Harry was living in Ireland with Concepta, wasn't he? So I don't know I don't know where we're up to.
Just checking, we're not talking about the famous Australian sportsman.
We are not talking about that Harry Hewitt.
We're also not talking about James Hewitt, who might be
you have a look at that for me. So they end up going back to Weatherfield. Jack throws him out of the pub when Gordon tries to just have a reasonable chat with him.
1964.
Oh, there we go. He's long gone at this point then. And that's pretty much it for Gordon in 1968. What? He finds differently.
He last appeared in 67.
67. Well, he's still dead at this point. Definitely dead.
There's
1969. Yeah, that's it. 1968 was there was a panto in the community centre or wherever it was. Aladdin this year. He was supposed to get a big role in it, but he ended up losing his voice, so he ended up getting a role of Chi-Chi, whatever that is. And then he goes and sees Concepta in Ireland in Christmas.
Sounds possibly
like, you wouldn't be able to have a character like this
probably
in this day
not,
and age.
No.
Yeah, so they go over to see Concepta, Lucille's stepmum, over the New Year.
And probably Christopher as well.
Probably Christopher as well. So Gordon ends up coming back,
Who's the son?
leaving Lucille in Ireland for a bit. But we're now into 1969, Gemma, so I'm going to pass over to you.
Thanks. I love that. It's the best. Gordon takes Audrey Fleming and everyone falls asleep. They go to the cinema. No one remembers that episode.
You didn't? Did you say where did you just say Gordon takes Audrey Fleming?
To the cinema.
To the cinema. Did you say cinema?
I stopped and then I continued.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I wasn't really...
I'm pretty sure I said it.
That's
Maybe
all right.
I psychically projected it.
So he's still got Lucille.
Why are you going to Audrey? Why are you talking to Audrey Fleming?
Yeah, she's really boring. She's really boring. And she's married.
Well, they get spotted by Hilda and she starts spreading gossip. And Dickie Fleming thinks it's all an act to get at him.
Yeah, this was... the Dickie and Audrey Fleming... They came into the show and they were a really young married couple, weren't they?
Yeah.
But there was lots of affairs.
They don't like each other anymore.
Wasn't she? She was seeing Ray Langton behind his back as well, wasn't she?
No better than she should be.
Yeah, Dickie thinks that his wife is just parading around with Gordon to make him jealous, basically.
I don't really get why no better than she should be is an insult. She's no better than she should. What does that mean?
What do you mean?
Well, when somebody says, "Oh, she's no better than she should be,"
I don't.
What does it mean? And it's an insult. What does it mean? Like, does it mean that you only do the bare minimum?
She's no better than she should be.
Yeah.
I don't know this expression. I think you made it up.
Well, I don't know what I mean by it.
Continue.
Gordon passes his exams.
Hooray, he's an accountant.
And he wins £5 because he's one of the youngest ever candidates. And so he buys an engagement ring for Lucille.
You were looking up £5 just the other day, weren't you? Because we were watching an early 60s episode and somebody there was doing something or other with £5. And wasn't it? Oh, yeah, somebody had a fiver.
It's like £100.
Yeah, so he gets £100 or so for being one of the youngest ever accountancy candidates in the country, and he uses it to buy an engagement ring for Lucille.
Isn't that adorable?
So that's
what a
very sweet.
£69 by that year.
Okay, 69 in 69. Eh?
Yeah. So now he's an accountant. He finally approves of him, but he's having second thoughts about getting married and the wedding and everything. And he tells Maggie he doesn't want to marry Lucille anymore. And he tries to tell Lucille, but she won't even listen. She's too excited. And she's booked the ceremony for Easter Saturday, which is one of these. Sounds like it was the original, I've got something to tell you. Wait, Gordon.
Let me tell you first. I've booked us a wedding.
Hooray! Da-da-da-da. Lucille continues to prepare for the wedding and she gets herself a wedding dress. And then Gordon walks in on her wearing it and he just freaks out. Says, I can't marry you. Annie's incensed, accuses Maggie of putting him off of Lucille. And Annie's like, you have to get married now. But Gordon stands firm, but he won't take the ring back because it's only 69 quid. Lucille goes out on a bender. Gordon decides to move to London to work at the head office. And he meets up with Lucille at Jackson's Chippy and they have a very amicable final goodbye. And then he has leaving drinks at the Rovers and he ends up going down south.
And that could have been the end of Gordon, wasn't it? That was certainly the end of his biggest stint in the show. He basically, the actor Bill Kenwright was hired by Coronation Street and they thought that they would be able to keep him for a bit longer. So they had these real grand plans for him. The original plan was that he would marry Lucille and that they'd be, the street's next big married couple. But Bill said, I don't want to stay on anymore. I want to spread my wings and be the chairman of Everton Football Club and one of the world's leading theatrical producers and much more.
Right.
So they had to completely change their plans and this is why the jilting ended up happening.
Well, it's also left us with Dickie and Audrey Fleming as the bright young things.
Yeah, I don't think they stayed much longer than this either. It does make me wonder, like, what if Gordon had stayed? Because I think it's fair to say that he's not exactly one of Coronation Street's most well-remembered characters,
people don't know who this character is.
No, well, they tell you what they will do after they finish listening to this, I'll tell you. He's a name that people might recognise, and I mean, you've got to watch Coronation Street in 1968, basically, to get an idea about what this guy was like. But yeah, it does make me wonder how different things would be if they'd have stayed on. Because even Lucille, she stayed in the show for quite a while after this, didn't she? But she never married again. Maybe they would have had to have kids. Maybe she would have stayed on. This decision of Bill's to leave.
No, the reason that she left the show was not her decision, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, of course. But it does make me wonder. I like kind of these alternate histories. What if somebody had decided to stay on, particularly if Coronation Street had big plans for them. And he could have been as big a household name as the likes of Lem Fairclough.
He could have been the second Ken of Corrie.
He could have been the second Ken, absolutely. He does make not frequent. He makes some returns to Coronation Street over the next couple of decades. Biggest of which I would say was the 1974 to 75 return. Now, by this time, his mum, still mum, his mum Maggie is engaged to this guy called Ron Cook. And Gordon returns to Weatherfield for the ceremony.
Clegg Cook or Cook Clegg?
No, she becomes Maggie Clegg. I mean, she becomes Maggie Cook. She does it all traditional.
Double-barreled.
So I don't think they had such a thing back in those days.
Let a woman do that.
So Lucille pretends not to care that Gordon's back. Obviously, she was somewhat hurt by the amicable, in inverted commas, dumping that she received 5 years previously, but she kind of secretly does get makeup up and gets herself ready just in case she might see him and able to convince him to stay in Weatherfield. But Gordon doesn't got time for girls himself because he's on a mission, having learned that Maggie's fiance Ron is an alcoholic. Another one. She sure knows how to pull him, doesn't she, that Maggie?
Does she keep picking him up in, like, meetings or something?
Yeah, she just hangs around the AA meeting
outside
hall.
When they come out?
Yeah, I guess so.
She's like, all those people in there, they're just trying to crush your dreams. You come with me, you can have as much beer as you want. Immediately they're like, brilliant.
I don't even think they had an alcohol licence in the shop at this point, did
there was a big story about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, wasn't that with Renee versus Annie?
Yeah, and Annie did not want them to get that.
Yeah, so she doesn't hang around drunks at all.
That's a long story. Won't get into that right now.
So anyway, Maggie says, look, son, don't worry about this. My Ron hasn't touched a drop of alcohol in 2 years. And Gordon's like, good enough for me. Eventually he gives the wedding his blessing and they get married.
As long as he said he hasn't, that's fine then.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Gordon catches the attention of a new girl called Beverly Mather, who, the interesting fact about her, I think so, the actress who played her played another character, also with the surname Mather, the previous year.
Mather or Mather?
Mather, I don't know. So that was weird. That's kind of almost like
an unrelated person with the same surname.
Yeah, it's like they brought her back and then decided,
like, what's your name?
we really think you look like a Mather, but now you're a Beverly Mather. It's a little bit like the when Rita came back into it the second time. They wanted to call her Rita, and then they decided, let's make her the same Rita as had been in it previously, you know. And also a little bit like Bruno Langley playing Candice's boyfriend. And then coming back the next year and playing Todd, her new boyfriend.
This is 74. They're probably thinking, no one's gonna know.
No one's gonna know. This is
who's gonna ever talk about this?
Well, that's the thing. I wonder how many people ever did recognise this sort of thing. That it's so much easier for us to pick out now. Well, for Corrie to pick out mostly.
It's a click away, isn't it?
Yeah. Even we get told, like, characters who are in it now, we might discover a few weeks or months into their tenure. Oh yeah, they were in it 5 years ago. Didn't you notice? And
no, of course we didn't notice.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a super recogniser.
Really don't notice these kind of things at all. So I don't know whether they would have back then.
And I was reading this earlier. I was also thinking, I wonder if they would ever have conceived of a world where Coronation Street has like its own website and a podcast and people are like talking about it. But then I thought they probably did because it was massive all the way through its run. Like, it immediately was hugely popular. And if you told them what a podcast was, they'd probably be like, yeah, of course there'll be podcasts about Coronation Street.
And they'll be really, really good.
Yeah.
Not just played by people who are reading things that they found on the internet. Stuff people who have actually seen every single episode.
Yeah.
We're working our way slowly through the 60s, very, very, very slowly, aren't we? So you never know, we might get to seeing Gordon Clegg at some point. So anyway, Gordon and Beverly starts dating. He serves her in the corner shop one day, and they get talking, and they become an item.
What do you think he gives her? Like a pound of ham?
Yeah, bit of sausage, maybe. So Maggie gets married. She and Ron emigrate to Zaire.
I remember this happening as well. I remember thinking, why are you going? Zaire?
What's in Zaire? What's
Zaire.
What is there to attract you from Weatherfield there?
What was good in Zaire?
So Gordon promises to stay in Weatherfield for a bit because she is leaving quite quickly and they need to sell the shop. So he agrees to oversee the sale of it. In come the Hopkins family. Another,
good.
Yeah, I know. Another family name that casual viewers of Coronation Street were like, never heard of them. Maybe the name Trisha Hopkins, who ends up being a friend of Gail, rings a bell. But this was really one of Coronation Street's examples of a failed family, wasn't it? These were like the Mortons of the 1970s.
Thumbs down for the Hopkins.
I think they honestly.
Worse
I think
than the Flemings? No, one's worse than the Flemings.
The Hopkins were in the show for less than a year. You had the mum and the dad Hopkins, Granny Hopkins, exactly, who was actually
everyone's favourite Hopkins,
and then Trisha, the granddaughter. So they come in and they want to buy this shop.
I knew that Zaire, I didn't think it existed anymore, but it is, maybe I'm stupid for not knowing this, but maybe some people don't know, it's now the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Oh, is that the same place, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that as well. Fantastic. Good facts. So,
anyone wants me to tell you anything, if I've got Wikipedia, I'll tell you the answer.
I think in the early days, the Hopkins are just renting the shop for the time being, but they've moved in and then they're running the place now. So,
who they think they are? That's what I don't like about them. Who they think they are, coming in to the corner shop and acting like they can sell ham? No.
They were also very, very Welsh, weren't they, the Hopkins?
I don't care about whether you're Welsh or not. I'm not xenophobic.
I love Welsh accents. I would like to have a proper Welsh family on Coronation Street. So,
I would
maybe the Hopkins granddaughters can come back. Trisha Hopkins, she could still absolutely come back into the show.
I don't know if Gareth Pierce doesn't have a Welsh accent.
No.
He is Welsh. But can he do a Welsh accent? Because it would be
Almost
much fun if for some reason... He can speak Welsh, can't he?
Yeah, Gareth Pierce.
It would be so much fun if for some obscure reason, because you know how they like to do their jolly japes at the Undertakers, which is the most hilarious business in Coronation Street. If he had to pose as a Welsh person for some story and started speaking in a Welsh accent, I would just love that. That would be fantastic. But yeah, if we're not going to have that, then a full-time Welsh character, please.
Yeah, it's not too far away.
Maybe played by listener Al Parr.
Oh yes, Al Parr.
I think he could be really good.
Yeah, get him on the show.
Yeah, get him on the show. Start a petition.
Beverly.
But best Welsh character ever, because this is the competition.
Yeah, that's really
Hopkins.
not much. Beverly, Gordon's girlfriend, remember, that goes off on a trip to Southport with him one day, and she decides that she would quite like to work in London.
Something about Southport that inspires you to want to move to London.
Apparently so. And he's like, well, great, you can have a job there. But then Betty... Okay, so this is his aunt at this point, but Gordon is currently staying with her in Weatherfield.
Because they're very close,
Yes, finds out from Billy Walker that Beverly has got a bit of a bad reputation.
I wonder what that's for.
Yes, I wonder.
Burning her buns or something.
What? So Betty comes home one day to find out that Gordon and Beverly are engaged in a little bit of hanky-panky, and she tells them in no uncertain terms, sling your hook, mate, you're not staying in my house and getting up to that funny business.
It's illegal.
Off you go. So Gordon goes down to London. Beverly finds out that he's gone back without her, and that's kind of the end of that young love, unfortunately.
I think she was dumped.
She was. So he goes off, that's kind of mid-1969, comes back to see Betty at Christmas, and Maggie is back from Zaire at that point. Briefly, she just comes to have a little
Democratic Republic of Congo.
By this time, the Hopkins have told Betty a bit of a secret they've discovered, and this is what we're waiting for. This is the big Gordon Clegg moment, the massive story, the thing that the actors were very, very peeved about when it happened, the scandal. They found a birth certificate that says that Gordon Clegg's mum is actually Elizabeth Preston, who, as of course we all know, is Betty Turpin.
What is it with Betty and keeping important bits of paper hidden?
What do you mean?
Didn't she also hide the deeds?
Oh, yes, we'll find out about that at the end. You're right.
She's just hiding all this really important paperwork all over the shop. Literally.
Gordon and Betty and the Cleggs in general are the retcon family of Coronation Street.
They're like the squirrels.
So
the hiding facts.
Yeah. So basically, we now know
Why have you
the
got
viewers.
A pen out?
I just had it. I'm just pointing with my pen.
Yeah.
Because I'm being a teacher at this moment.
Right,
Listen carefully. If you're in drift into this. So what?
At the back there.
Listen. Betty is actually Gordon's mum. We knew this. We
told you that at the beginning.
But now
spoiler.
the truth is not completely out there.
Right.
But Betty has been told that by the Hopkins that they know, and so she's doing her best this Christmas to stop the truth getting to Gordon's ears.
Nosy?
But of course. They were
right nosy.
They were basically
buggers.
Using it as blackmail.
Yeah,
Granny Hopkins particularly was
cow.
She was brought in to be a replacement Ina Sharples type character.
But everyone just hated her.
It just didn't go down well. It was a real flub of a battle axe, was Granny Hopkins. But yeah, at this point she was like, I've got something on you, and I'm gonna. They basically try and use this secret to try and get a good deal on the shop.
Yeah.
So 1975, Gemma, over to you.
Well, Maggie realises that she's going to have to tell Gordon the truth before she goes back to Zaire, because otherwise he's going to find out. So she breaks the news to him, and he's like,
This was a really touching scene. I was doing a bit of watching a YouTube while I was putting my notes together for this. And on the Scandals episode of the Corrie years, which was on, I don't know, it was about 10 years or so ago, wasn't it? They did show the scene of Gordon being told by Maggie, and it was this really kind of moody, dimly lit scene in the lounge, and they both did a really good job of this.
Yeah, so he's like, he does not like the idea that he is a bastard.
Bastard? Am I allowed to say that?
It's the legal term. Is it a legal term? I don't know. But he is technically a bastard. But he's also like, I'm glad that Les is not my dad.
Yeah, because he never liked him anyway.
Never liked him anyway. Can you imagine how sad that'd be if you're a parent and your kid finds out that they're not related to you and they're like, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's really sad. So
especially as Les is a recovered alcoholic at this point.
Well, he's still he's out of the hospital.
He's out of the hospital by now.
Who knows what he's getting up to? Right. So Gordon goes to London, but then he comes back because he gets a letter from Granny Hopkins about his parentage, and because she doesn't know that he's been tipped off, and she's trying to still trying to use this as blackmail.
Yeah, so he comes back and is like, well, I already knew it, actually.
Yeah, they're renting this place, but they want to buy it, and like you said, trying to use it as blackmail. And he comes back and says, haha, I knew all along. Well, I didn't know, I knew.
I've known for a few months that Betty is actually my mum.
I'm not going to help you, and the argument causes the Hopkins, they just do a midnight flit. Yeah. And they leave Weatherfield in the middle, and nobody knows where they are.
They leave so fast, they accidentally leave Trisha behind, don't they? But yeah, it was a really weird end from the sounds of it to the Hopkins family. They just disappear in the middle of the night, and they're not even been in the programme a year at this point. And it was apparently all caused by the shame of failing blackmail. I don't know. They got a reputation, obviously, to hold up as the master blackmailers of the North.
It's like, we've got to go back to Wales.
Yeah.
Because
they're a canny bunch up here. Let's go back to Wales where we can easily blackmail those simple folk.
Well, maybe all of Wales was like, oh, you've embarrassed us. You've got to come back for re-education purposes. So anyway,
we thought we had something with there. We thought we haven't got very much in Wales, but now we thought we would have a reputation as blackmails, and you spoiled it for us, Hopkins. Thanks very much. Come back here.
Perfect.
Exactly what
you could be the Welsh
sound like.
Character on Coronation Street. All you need to do is learn how to act and do a Welsh accent. Right, so yeah, they just leave, and Gordon tries to run the shop by himself. It doesn't work, so he has to take Blanche on to run it for him, and he goes back to London again. Blanche. He's like a yo-yo. And then he comes back at the end of the year, and he dates the barmaid at the Gatsby Club called Sophie Edwards. He gets drunk on a night out, and he takes her back to Betty's, and he's like, oh, this is my mum. And Sophie doesn't... Why would you realise that this is a highly significant step in their father I mean, mother, daughter.
Well,
son,
he's.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
He's proper drunk, isn't he? He's steaming, and it's still supposed to be a secret, but I think he's like, here's me, ma'am.
Yeah, and she
like,
doesn't
okay.
know that this was a secret.
No.
And so she talks to Rita, Deirdre and Ray about the fact that Gordon looks like his mum, who is Betty. And they're like, you're an idiot.
Or Mackie's his mum, what are you like?
Well, yeah, they look so alike.
But then Gordon comes into the pub and kind of is like, come on, we've got to go. Do you know what I mean? Shut up, girl. I've forgotten your name.
He rushes her out.
Sophie
rushes her out. And everyone's like, that was weird. Maybe she is his mum. I think it's quite funny because Maggie and Betty, I'd find it difficult to find two women who looked more dissimilar.
I know.
Who were on Coronation Street at the same time. They look nothing alike. Because you've got Betty, who's like very plump in the face, brown haired, very like she was like
she's an hard woman.
She was kind of tomboy before tomboys really exist. I don't know. I think tomboys always existed.
She's been hardened.
And then you've got Maggie, who was really prissy and high cheekboned and blonde and neat, and the fact that everyone's like, yeah, Gordon does look like Betty, not at all like Maggie. How suspicious. So the word reaches Hilda the next day and she starts gossiping and saying, Betty should be ashamed of herself. But then everybody starts to feel sorry for Betty and she realises that it's a good thing the truth has come out in the open and that maybe she shouldn't leave important papers stuffed in holes.
Well, the reason they find it is because the Hopkins have moved into the shop and it's just like stuffed down.
Behind a bureau or something.
Yeah, something like that.
But there's always paperwork. In the old days of Corrie, there's always some paperwork that was found stuffed somewhere.
Well, the other story with that I remember was when Ken finds out that he's got the son, hasn't he, from Susan Cunningham, one of his girlfriends.
Did that behind a bureau as well?
Yeah. That was in number 3 where Ken used to live and Emily was doing a bit of decorating or something, I can't remember. And she finds a bit of paper from Susan Cunningham in the 60s saying, Ken, I'm carrying your son.
Something.
Yeah, something like that. And
these days you just put your phone on the table and go to the toilet without it, and everyone looks on there and finds out your secrets.
I love it in Corrie when they find things from the past. It's like when David found Ivy's diary up in the attic that said that Gail wanted to abort him. It's a really great way of just having a little
tied to the past.
Yeah, tied to the past without characters just saying, "Oh, do you remember so and so?" The other one was when was it Sally finds one of Irma Ogden's paintings in the attic at number 13?
That was
I love all of that.
That was
stuff.
Just a blink and you miss it thing.
Yeah,
it didn't actually turn into a storyline like this.
No.
So anyway, they're all like, "Oh, good, everyone knows, and everyone's fine about it." And Gordon says, "Come to London with me," and she says, "Bloody hell, I would rather die in a fire." Yeah. So she stays up.
Betty stays up north.
And so
this was a huge story at the time, and back then, well, I would say that these kind of retcons weren't a thing in soap, but they kind of were. Like you said, people weren't necessarily paying attention so much back then, or they didn't have good memories, and you did have characters like Ivy, who was supposed to be married to a guy called Jack, and then it turned out that he never existed.
They played a bit more. No, I think they still do it now. They play fast and loose with some things and they don't expect you to notice. And sometimes we don't notice at all.
But this was huge at the time, mostly for the actors who played Gordon and Maggie, Bill Kenwright and Irene Sutcliffe, because they really felt that they'd worked so hard on getting this mother-son bond between them. And Bill once said, "They sent me the scripts, I read them and I cried."
Wow, this is quite significant, really, because this is a character that he plays on and off. You know, he played him for a year and then he moved on with his life and he came back when they asked him to. But when he got, it's obviously so deep and meaningful to him. Well,
the fact that he kept on coming back from leaving in the 60s, and he's last seen in 2012, which ended up being Betty's funeral. This character in the show that propelled him into stardom. And now people are going around mucking around with his backstory.
Yeah. It's how much of it is down to it's kind of undermining my professional relationship with Irene, who played Irene Sutcliffe, who played Maggie, or is it, undermining my characters or besmirching the origin of my character?
The thing is, it's not the same as, well, not for him at least. He always knew that she
No. He wouldn't have.
Was not. He always thought that she was his mum, so it didn't make any difference to his performance, or it shouldn't do.
No, exactly.
It's Irene who really did her best to play as if she was the mum.
Yeah.
Much in a similar way as I think, say, Margie Clark did playing Tyrone's mum, Jackie, up until it was revealed that
I would say
not the new canon.
It's beneficial to you as a Corrie, if you're in Corrie at all, and you're listening to this, I say always play every part with a slight hint of suspicion.
Yeah, just in case.
In case they retcon you to be a completely different person.
Yeah, and then you can say, well, actually, when I gave that little look...
I did a look.
Gave him a bit of a side-eye back in episode 11,562.
And that was to indicate that I knew.
I knew it all along. But no, Irene apparently was angry. Bill in that Corrie Years programme said that he was shocked, but she was not only shocked, she was angry. Irene said that it completely demolished the effort that both actors had put into making their relationship believable, and loads of people involved got letters as well, just saying this isn't right. You two should be mother and son. This was quite the scandal in the days, but on the plus side, at least, it did lead to a really lovely relationship between Bill Kenwright and Betty Driver, his new mum, and they stayed very close for the rest of her life. So that was, going ahead 40 years or so. And yeah, he kind of saw her as his second mum, which was one of the reasons why he would always keep coming back to Coronation Street, because he wanted to be in more stories with his Corrie mum, which is lovely.
I wonder how much of this was sort of like down to the fact that Maggie left, didn't she?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. She had left at this point. She just kind of coming back a little bit.
Do you think that they would have kept the same story if she hadn't wanted to leave?
I don't know. I don't know where the idea for this story came from.
Yeah, that's
but
a question.
To look back at it now, to me, I go back and go, oh, that was exciting. And me, Mr. I hate retcons.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, they didn't have quite these kind of scandals. This feels huge to me, and I'd love to have been there at the time, and just to find out what my reaction would have been as well. Because yeah, looking back, it's just, well, that's what happens. Well, that's very juicy.
It's also back in this time, it would have been really, really scandalous.
That's very true. I mean, it was certainly more scandalous than it was when it happened to, say, Ashley back in the late 90s, when it was revealed that Fred was actually his dad and not his uncle. That was a brilliant storyline as well, but certainly not as scandalous as this one might have been.
But women were still being thrown into mental homes for having children.
Mm.
I don't know when that stopped, but This would have been, there would have been loads of people that would have probably hated Betty.
Yeah, for sure. So it's no. We talked about this fairly recently when we did the Stephen Reed character profile, didn't we? And Audrey having to give Stephen up to the Reeds, because that's what happened back then. I was saying about Ashley earlier, and I mean, you don't know because you didn't watch it at the time, and it was so long ago for me that it happened. I wonder Bill was saying that it kind of diminished that relationship that we build up as mother and son. Did the revelation that Fred was actually Ashley's dad, which was surely not planned from the beginning, did that diminish the relationship between them? I would say no, it made it stronger.
Well, why would... Yeah, but he's talking about his relationship between Gordon and Maggie, not Gordon and Betty.
Yeah, no, I suppose so, but it's a change of familial relationship and how you work with certain... Because Fred always, at the beginning, I assume, John Savardin was like, this is my nephew. I wonder when the storyline was pitched to him a few years later, no, you're actually going to be his dad, whether he said, oh, I would have played X, Y and Z differently had I known that I was actually playing his father.
Yeah, but I thought he was so bombastic in his performance that it made perfect sense.
Mm.
Do you not think so?
Yeah, I guess so. I wonder kind of similarly to say Carla and Johnny as well, because it was revealed that Johnny was her father, and I don't know. I thought particularly the Ashley and Fred one was done very, very well, but partly I suppose we didn't know Ashley's original mum yes, she came into the programme when the whole storyline was going on, but it wasn't like, oh, that's ruined Ashley and original mum's relationship, because we didn't really see much of it. So I don't know. What you been?
I just wonder why Irene Sutcliffe left Corrie, and whether this was part of why she wanted to go, or if she said I'm going, and they were like, fine, well, we want to.
No, I think she decided to go before this was.
It doesn't make any sense for them to go, oh, we want someone to be Gordon's mum. If you're not going to be it, then that doesn't make sense, because Gordon wasn't in it.
No. So that was really Gordon's last big story. Every time that he came back from onto Coronation Street after that, it was for guest appearances almost, and just to dip his toe in and say, hello, it's me, I'm still going strong, which is lovely. It's always nice when characters who have got these family members living elsewhere in the country, when they pop up every now and then, and it happens so rarely these days. I remember when Todd was away for a while, he would once or twice appear on the street, wouldn't he? Just for a family visit. But generally, family visits just don't happen for practical reasons.
It was also really nice to think that the actors enjoyed their time there so much that they're willing to put things on hold, and that they're respected enough that Corrie wants them back, and it just shows a really nice, healthy working environment that makes you feel good about watching the show. Yeah. Even though I know some people did not have a good time.
Not everyone has everybody had a brilliant time with each other on Coronation Street. We do know that for sure. Yeah, I mean, especially for Bill Kenwright. I mean, he didn't need Coronation Street after he hit the big time in the theatre, and then with the football after that, he didn't need to come back at all. But he would always put his schedules on hold to make these little guest appearances.
Not always, he did periodically do this.
So let's run down some of his later cameos.
Well, in 1976, he comes back for 2 episodes. He finds out that the shop's being really badly managed by Gail and Trisha. Hey, surprise, surprise. 2 bimbos. And after his idea to buy it off Maggie and give it to Betty doesn't go down very well with Betty, he's like, I'm not running. I'm going on strike. I'm going to fold my arms and sulk.
He puts it on the market, doesn't he?
He just decides to sell it.
I think that's when... is that when Alf steps in there? I can't remember. I think I'm missing somebody quite important. Don't write in and let me know. I don't need to be told these things. Yeah, and that was basically...
We live in ignorance on this show.
That was basically Bill's last proper acting job in that 1976 Corrie. He just decided it wasn't for him, and he wanted to...
do other things.
Go down other avenues.
This guy is just incredible, really, isn't he?
He
was in. He after this, he was in England, My England in 1995, and he played himself in an episode of Dream Team in 2003.
Yeah, so Dream Team, that was that Sky One football programme. Do you remember seeing adverts for it? I remember watching The Simpsons and seeing adverts for that. England, My England was I think it was a film, but it was about George II. So it was a proper period piece, and I don't really know what.
I just assumed it was another football thing.
No. It was literally about the Georgian era. So I don't know. I don't know how he ended up in that.
But he'd also been working as an actor when he wasn't on Corrie. He'd been in The Liverbirds, Carry On Matron, Dixon and Doc Green, which I think my mum loved. And he was in that episode of the ITV Play in 1975. So then he was in Corrie,
in the ITV Play a few times.
1976, and then he sort of went, I'm not going to be an actor anymore. I'm going to just become an international.
But like I said,
superstar of theatre and football.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, he did make the odd stint return after that. So 1982, he was back to announce to Betty that he's getting married to a woman called Caroline. Caroline? I think Caroline. Betty thinks that he's rushing into things somewhat because he's only just got to know her. But when she meets her, she likes what she sees.
She's like, marry her quick, otherwise I'll do it.
So they have this quick register office do off screen later in the year. Betty's pretty heartbroken to hear about it after the fact that it's happened.
Yeah.
And a few years after this, Caroline gives birth to their son. Later in 1982, Gordon's real dad, Ted, turns up on the street to visit Betty. Now, this is quite heartbreaking, really. What? So this is the wartime Portsmouth
sweetheart.
Living, sweetheart, Ted.
You say he's a wartime sweetheart and everything. I call him a deadbeat dad and a dog.
He didn't know. He just had another wife he had to get back to. I was reading in one of the old Corrie magazines, it says that Ted lived in Southampton, but Corriepedia say Portsmouth. So they're very different places. Who's right?
we are allowed to travel between the two now, since
Maybe
the war
he was like in
finished.
Fareham or somewhere in between. Anyway, he's got no idea about his secret son. He just like recognises her name and comes to talk with her. And although she tells him that she's married to a man called Cyril now, so there's Cyril Turpin, and she tells him that she has a son that's not actually Cyril's, she doesn't tell him the whole story. She doesn't say, by the
Betty's
way...
saying this to Ted.
Yeah. She doesn't say, by the way, my son is your son, because she realises that many years have passed by this time.
Get some money
he doesn't
out
want to
then.
drop a new son on him. He's doing perfectly well for himself. Her son is doing great. So he leaves the show and just after that little 1 or 2 episode appearance, not knowing that he's got another son out there.
See, this is the chaos that gets caused by those genetics websites, the family tree things.
Yeah, I couldn't get away with that these days.
I'm surprised they haven't done that in Corrie. They haven't really, have they?
What, genetics?
Well, like, I've done a swab and I found out I've got half sister.
Not really, but Tyrone was very interested in his family tree 5-6 years ago when he found out about Evelyn. But yeah, I don't know whether there's been any... well, there's also, you got your DNA test stories when the father wants to find out whether the baby is actually his.
Yeah.
But yeah, not
because really it's interesting,
DNA
isn't
swab
it?
and find out that I'm half Viking.
Yeah.
What's next?
In 1995...
Yeah, long gap. What was the last one? 1982 we just said. So he has a bit of a 13-year hiatus from Coronation Street while he's doing some fairly important things in the theatre.
Betty gets engaged to Billy Williams and Gordon shows up for the wedding, and Billy likes him, but he wonders if this guy is the one that is his real dad.
Yeah, all this time he doesn't know.
Who
Betty
this
doesn't
man is.
tell him ever who his dad is, and she's...
That's really unfair.
Because the story with Billy Williams, if you remember, was that he and Betty were also
Wartime
sweetheart-ish.
She got around, I'm telling you.
I think it was...
it was her darts skills that all the men loved it because she could beat them at darts.
Wasn't it VE night that Billy and Betty met, and then he comes back for the D-Day... No, not the D-Day. Or maybe... or whatever it was. No, the VE Day celebrations anniversary thing in 1995, and
they get together.
And they get together and get married. So Billy, Gordon thinks
is this
that he
my
might
dad?
be his
No.
dad.
Is this my dad? No. Is this my dad? No. I'll tell you when your dad turns up.
Would you want to know?
Yes,
if you
of course
knew
I
that
would.
your mum knew.
I'd get mad. This would consume me with... You know what I'm like? I don't like it when when somebody knows something I don't know.
No, you don't.
I don't
like
like people telling me they know secrets. I don't like lies or secrets. They drive me insane. So if my mum knew who my dad was, I would never ever stop asking.
And it doesn't seem like he was a wrong un, just because he lived in Portsmouth.
Why is it down to her to decide whether or not he should know? Who's it negative towards?
I don't know how much Gordon wanted to know, but you know, he did have a terrible relationship with his adopted father, Les. So that, you know, in some fictions, that might lead to the character to say, "Well, I want to find my real dad," but he clearly didn't want to know that much, or he just respected his mum's wishes.
Don't tell me I want it to be a surprise.
Stir the pot.
Maybe it's the king. Could be. He gives her away. Gordon gives Betty away at the wedding, and he has to go back to London.
Yeah, because Caroline isn't a very nice piece of work. We meet Caroline
Not a nice piece of work.
No, she's nasty. She doesn't like it in Weatherfield. She wants to whisk him back down south. And this carries on when Caroline appears in it again a few years later. So there was a nice story behind this. Like I said, 13 years had passed since Bill's previous appearance in Coronation Street in the early 80s. Corrie wanted him back for Billy's wedding, and he said the only reason that he came back is because it would be a short stint and the story would be about Betty. Oh, Abby, have you got something to say there?
She loves Gordon Clegg.
You got anything to say there?
She's got stuff all over her mouth.
What's she been doing?
Eating
grass, Abby. Anyway, he said, because I've got a Coronation Street magazine with an interview with Bill Kenwright back in the day, and he says, "I look upon Betty," so this is Betty Driver, "as my second mother. We're very close, and I've kept in constant touch with her. And as my own mother is a huge Coronation Street fan too, I agreed to do it for her." So he basically had his fake mother and his real mother that were both saying, "Oh, come back and do a little bit on Coronation Street." Yeah, but as I say, he was a very, very busy man at that point, and his anecdote about that time was that he broke the record in his hotel for the highest number of faxes ever received by a guest, because he had 13 stage shows in production all around the world at this point.
Ridiculous.
And
that's utterly ridiculous.
And the fact that he was able to put that on hold to come and film a little bit on Coronation Street, good for him. He said, although returning to the street has certainly caused problems, I don't regret it for a moment. That's how you can tell that you're the boss.
Yeah.
I know I'm causing problems, but I don't care.
I pay you to deal with my problems that I cause.
Yeah, exactly.
He said the day after they asked me, I was so excited. Even at Wembley, when we won the Cup, fans were calling me Gordon. When I'm walking along the road, people still shout, "Hey, Gordon!" And I even receive mail addressed to him. Well, I hope you don't open it.
I don't know how much of that to believe or not, because, like I said, he was only in it for 100 or so episodes.
You know, he's talking... This is 1995, so this was a magazine that you read that was, you know, contemporary to the time.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, we still didn't have that many channels, and they weren't super popular, so Coronation Street is still, like, a massive part of culture, especially if you're up in the north.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, he next returns, the character that is, not Bill Kenwright, in 2002. So this is Betty's retirement party. This is, you know, when Bet Lynch first came back onto the street with the
yes.
Give That Boy a Coconut. Bet and Gordon turn up for that, but he's played by someone else here. This is Jeffrey Leesley, who is apparently he's a fairly well-known actor. He'd been a TV actor since 1976. He's even still acting today. And he'd been in Coronation Street in 1978, playing a guy called Tommy Cox. So yeah, they decided... I don't know why Bill Kenwright couldn't make it for that one, but they decided to recast him for busy man.
He's like, last time I came to Manchester, I broke all the fax machines. I can't come back.
And I said I don't care and it caused problems. Well, the rest of the board at Everton maybe had something to say about that particular quote. Anyway, so this is really nothing. He's just there saying, hello, it's me, Gordon. And we get to see a bit more of Caroline being an utter cow, because he decides to tell Betty, look, you're retiring from work at the Rovers. Do you want to come down and live with me in Wimbledon? They are at this point, and Caroline is not happy with this. But Betty decides to go down and live with him anyway. Although she doesn't stay there, of course, for very long, because it turns out that she's nothing more than a glorified housekeeper. Caroline really, really doesn't like her. And so she comes back to Weatherfield again. I
can imagine the epic clash of personalities that was involved. Can you imagine if Betty was your mother-in-law and she didn't like you and she lived in your house? Those two really were locked horns. Although by this time Betty had mellowed a little bit. No, she never did. No, she never did. I think she was just so fond of Gordon, she was happy to put up with things. Yeah, she did. She was a bit of a sucker sometimes for people who needed her. Yeah, I think I remember she kind of comes back to Weatherfield for a little bit, gets talking to Emily and talks about, oh, you know, it's quite nice, we love your house. Of course, I mostly spend most of my time alone there because Gordon and Caroline are very busy. And everyone just persuades her to come back to Weatherfield again. Don't hang out with that sour old bitch. Come back here. Gordon also is in it in 2004, just a one-off appearance with some flowers for Betty's birthday, and that was Jeffrey Leesley as well. Not really sure why they did that, really. But that was all we heard of the character until 2012, when Betty sadly died, and this was following the off-screen death of Betty Driver, who'd played the character for many 40 plus years, I think she was in this show. Good old Betty. And there's a bit of scandal around the way her exit was handled, wasn't it? This was a few months before the podcast started, and I'd be interested to know what we would have said about it. Yeah, we would have probably had a rant, wouldn't we? I don't know whether we would, because... Well, let's just... Okay, let's explain. What happened? What's the scandal? He comes back and he tells everyone that Betty has died, and he arranges her funeral, and he agrees that she should be buried with Cyril in Weatherfield. And so... Sorry, Billy. Rita decides to clear out the house, and she finds a letter there bequeathing the Rovers to Betty from Annie Walker. So... basically saying, after I die, I want Betty to have the Rovers. So this puts the cat among the pigeons, and Stella Price, who's the landlady at the time, thinks, well, hang on a minute, I thought the pub was mine, but maybe technically it should be Betty's. Yeah, this should come up in the searches, Stella, when you bought it. You should just speak to your solicitor. So anyway, Stella's like, oh no, what will I do now?
In her best northern accent.
As good as mine.
So obviously,
and Gordon's like, don't worry about it.
Well, the big scandal here, it's quite apt that in Gordon's final appearance, there's a discovered letter that tries to have a bit of a retcon. Yeah. Because, of course, Annie Walker couldn't possibly have bequeathed the Rovers to Betty because she didn't own the Rovers. It was owned by Newton and Ridley at the time. So it was a very nice idea, in a way, to say, oh, Betty, you actually been the Rovers owner all this time. But for people who cared about that kind of thing, and I don't know whether we would have done it at the time.
We would have moaned about this. This reminds me... Right, this is a personal anecdote. This reminds me of when I was little and my godmother gave me a copy of Sleeping Beauty, the Disney film, to watch on my birthday. And I was utterly devastated to find out that she just rented it from the corner shop and I had to give it back. So this is kind of like what Annie was doing. Annie's like, here you go, you can have this. You can have all of it. I don't care. I'll be dead.
That's funny. Yeah, so they're like, oh, well, let's just not say anything about it. And that's how they ended up being, because I think that retcon has kind of been just forgotten about and retconned away, hasn't it?
Retcon it back.
Yeah. Well, eventually...
I'd like to retcon Stella out.
The episode carries on and there's Betty's funeral. I don't think we see the funeral, I can't remember, but there's a little wake in the Rovers afterwards, and Gordon reads this really touching letter that supposedly, written by Betty.
I don't reckon it was written by her.
So she kind of calls out, I think, Ken and Deirdre and Rita and Dennis and a few of the others. Shout out to Ken and Deirdre in my final will. And
shout out to Ken, the OG.
It's really nice. If you haven't seen that, I watched it the other day and it was a really well written and performed scene. But at the end of the episode, we have the whole ghostly voices going through the Rovers as Stella's there in the dark, and she hangs up the portrait of Betty on the wall, which is still there now.
Good. Never remove it.
But there was also a caption...
Those Waterfords try to get it down. I'm going to get mad.
I know. What happened to that? But yeah, there was a caption underneath the picture that said, Betty Williams, landlady, 1984 to 2012. And I don't know when they got rid of that, because that's not there now, is it? So literally, they put up...
Landlady?
Yes, landlady.
Oh, I get it.
Kind of officially acknowledging the fact that she was the true owner of the Rovers since Annie Walker died, which clearly she wasn't. And I think after that, Coronation Street, just like, well, that was just a nice little throwback. Don't worry about that. Do you know who was in charge of the storylines at that point? The head storyline or whatever the title was called back in those days. It was Ian McLeod.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, he's been the producer for 6 years now, but even back then he was still working
meddling
fairly high up in the medicine department.
Gordon also gives Sean the hot pot recipe.
Oh yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Kind of significant plot when it comes up every now and then, doesn't it? Yeah,
that Sean is the holder of the secret recipe.
So I want to know what he does with the, because there's been a few stories about him and his hot pot recipe.
Who, Sean?
Yeah. I want to know what he's doing with this recipe now.
I don't know whether it's in the public domain now. I can't remember whether he's still got it under lock and key. I'll tell you what.
You can't copyright a recipe.
Maybe. We're seeing a bit of friction between Sean and Dylan at the moment on Corrie, aren't we? Maybe Dylan's going to find the secret recipe and he's going to sell it on.
Maybe
to get the money that he owes old Mason.
Mason be like, I'll buy it off you for $1,000. My mum's been going on about that pot recipe. Maybe he'll burn it.
Didn't it end up at the bistro at one point?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll burn it and Sean will have to try to remember how many dashes of Worcester sauces.
I don't think we see... I know the Rovers is closed at the moment, but I don't think we see very much hot pot eating going on.
They do eat it. Loads on Corrie. Yes, they do. They're always got they've got those little ceramic dishes.
Yeah, you're right. And they did have the story earlier this year, didn't they, where Jenny was trying to scrimp on the contents.
Lamb in there.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, the price of lamb is shocking now. Do you guys remember when it used to be able to get a pack of lamb for the same as a pack of cubed beef, and now it's £7, over £7 for 450 grams of cubed lamb. What am I, Princess of Wales? Don't have money for that.
Good old Gemma Rants, love them. I don't care one way or the other about the price of lamb.
This is why when I get a flash sale, we end up with 10 packs of lamb
in our chest freezer. So, little bit about Bill himself. Then we've kind of pussyfooted around what he was most well known for, because it certainly wasn't Coronation Street. But for me, it was his work in theatre. Now, I am not a theatre lover at all.
What do you mean for you? It was his work in theatre.
Okay, I don't like football, so for me, the most important thing that he did was be a very, very successful theatre producer.
Because you don't really go to the theatre, darling.
I don't really, but if I had the choice about going to the theatre or the football, theatre would win. Because it's indoors and warm.
Yeah.
But he had Blood Brothers was his biggest, or one of his biggest successes. It's been running in, I think it's still there, I can't remember. But for 25 or so years, Blood Brothers has been running on West End. And I think he had a bit of a reputation of taking musicals that weren't doing so well and turning them around and turning them into smash hits.
Let's put Melanie C in it. Let's put... What's his Jason Donovan in it?
Yeah, Melanie C did Blood Brothers, didn't she, for a little bit?
Pop Kylie Minogue in it.
There's going to be a tribute to Bill Kenwright next month, I think, that's going to be led by Melanie C. Favourite Spice Girl. But yeah, he was also responsible for the huge success of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which as a child I remember being
that was
big thing.
Like everyone. That was the first time I ever think I had a consciousness of theatre, like musical theatre.
Yeah.
I think that was our generation's introduction to musical theatre.
That was the Hamilton of the 80s.
Everybody was going on about Jason Donovan and singing all the songs. I remember singing the songs with all my gaggle of little girlfriends in the playground going...
So he did that. He did a load of Broadway stuff. He was made CBE in 2001 for services to film and theatre. And in 2008, he was awarded an honorary degree for Nottingham Trent Uni in recognition of his outstanding contribution and commitment to British theatre. He was just huge. He was an honorary fellow of Liverpool's John Moores University, an honorary professor at the University of West London. Honestly, I think that if we look at... And I think Corrie can still claim him as we had him first.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to be up there with Coronation Street's biggest
export.
Success stories. I mean, I know they had Davy Jones for one episode, didn't they, in the 60s? But really, this is working class lad done good.
I don't know how he did it. He's incredible.
He... Whistle Down the Wind, Evita, Jesus Christ Superstar,
also
all these
Melanie
huge names in theatre. He was there pulling the strings behind them. He also, I found quite interesting, put on a few stars with fellow Corrie actors starring in them as well. So Pat Phoenix did a tour in 1970 called The Miracle Worker, and he was behind that. Anne Reid was in Billy Liar, and Reginald Marsh, who played Dave Smith in Coronation Street, was in that with Anne Reid as well. So some nice little connections to his Corrie roots in some of the shows that he put on.
Shall I tell you about the football things?
Yeah, I'm just going to fall asleep with that, sorry.
As a football fan myself, deeply involved in football, I can tell you all the facts of my head. I absolutely
respect... I've seen so much positive, so many positive vibes and well wishes and really grief from Everton fans. It really felt like he was so respected by the players, by the fans. He was responsible for the likes of Wayne Rooney. I know that he was a bit of a
football man,
a prodigy of Bill's. Yeah, go. You tell us a bit more.
Well, he was involved in the Everton Football Club in the 80s, and then he purchased shares and he bought 68% of the club in 1999, and then he became the chairman in 2004.
It's basically like, I'll have a bit of that. Who else?
Buying bits
Isn't
of it.
like Delia Smith?
Yeah.
Doesn't she own a football club?
She did at one point.
Sometimes it's the most...
Well, it was... No, but also Ryan Reynolds and what's-his-face of Always Sunny in Philadelphia have that Wrexham, don't they? And now I think that those are celebrities are like, I'm going to buy a football club.
I suppose it could be quite a moneymaker, but
I don't think you get into it to make money.
But for Bill, he was always an Everton supporter, and it must be nice if you got a load of cash coming in, saying, "Well, yeah, I want to invest in this club that I'm so passionate about."
Imagine if you could buy a share of Coronation Street.
Exactly.
You'd be right
I'll have that couple.
Yeah.
Get me on the board.
I want to be chairman
more experimental
of the board.
editing.
Can you imagine doing a soap by committee?
I think that's the only way we're going to get in there and get our wants
catered to.
Yeah, exactly.
They might make us a cup of tea, but I think that's the most we'll get out of them. So early in August this year, he was diagnosed with liver cancer and he had surgery to remove the tumour, but he had to stay in ICU for a prolonged period of time. And it looked like he was going to have a long recovery, but unfortunately he died on the 23rd of October this year, 2023, and he was aged 78.
I think it was earlier in October they put out a press release, did Everton, saying, yeah, he's okay, he's doing all right, the surgery was successful, and it was, within weeks, I think, that sadly the news broke that he passed away. Yeah.
So John Whiston, who's the managing director of continuing drama and head of ITV in the North, has said, though he is known to the world as a top theatre producer and chairman of Everton, he is known to Coronation Street fans as Gordon Clegg, the illegitimate son, don't bring that up, John, goodness, of the much-loved Betty Williams, he said. Though he left the show in 1969 to pursue his stellar career as a producer, we will always be grateful to him for returning from time to time to take part in important storylines, none more so than when he returned to this street for his mother's funeral in 2012.
Anthony Cotton said, rest in peace, Bill Kenwright. You were always so kind and supportive to me over the years. You were totally in love with our business and everyone who worked in it, and also, of course, your beloved football club. A real highlight of my time at Coronation Street was chatting to you over the Rovers Bar when our Betty passed away. One of the greats for sure, an icon. See you on the other side.
Tristan Gemil says, devastating news about Bill Kenwright. He was a force of nature, passionate, kind and fiercely loyal. The British theatre landscape won't be the same without him. I was lucky enough to cross his path and feel the bond of family that he cultivated. R.I.P. a very great man.
I just remember the day that his death was announced, and there was just wall-to-wall shock on our social media.
Yes.
It's so much outpouring of love for this man whose careers the actors that we follow had touched in some way over the years, and then obviously the football thing. So he was just like all sides. Everybody was really sorry to say goodbye to him. Sally Matthews, another Corrie star. You may have heard of her. I don't know where I was going with that.
Who she play?
She said, what a man, what a character. Thank you for the opportunities you gave me and countless others. There was no one quite like you.
Oh, it's so sad.
It is, but
It really goes to show you that even though he had all these amazing achievements and all the things that he did, the people that actually knew him were just talking about how lovely and kind and what a great person that he was, and I think that's really special.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, you do get some Coronation Street actors of the past
right
have had
bastards. Is that what you mean?
Some of them had more unfortunate, sad ends, and they kind of fell on hard times and had struggles and problems. So, although it's obviously sad that we no longer have Bill Kenwright in the world, it's nice to look back and say, well, he was loved and will be
that's
well
really
remembered.
What more can you ever want when you die? Then for people who to say that they loved and respected you and that you were a good person.
You guys had better say that about the podcast when we're gone.
Anyway, there'll be a few people that'll go, thank God.
I didn't think the podcast would last that long. I said, I'll listen to it. They'll probably be over in about a week or two. But no, here I am, 50 years later, still listening to the character profile of
Simon's third child.
Anyway,
so Billy Bob Barlow, the second.
There is Gordon Clegg. 106 episodes, was it? The scandal of the secret mother.
Some good retcons, well done.
Absolutely, and I do kind of wonder, what if he'd stayed? What if
wouldn't have had a very good chairman of Everton?
Well, I do wonder, like, if he'd have decided to say, well, yeah, I quite like Corrie and commit to that. Think of how the theatre world in particular would be different.
Well, also considering he seems to be incredibly ambitious and really clever, and like he seems to know how to get stuff working and how to get, work with people to achieve what he wants. He'd probably end up being the executive producer for life.
Yeah, that's true.
He probably would have ended up, just taking control of it, and who knows where we would be now.
I'd like to imagine that he had he did have this child, Peter Clegg, actually, didn't he? He's going to be our age, isn't he? He was born in 1985. Maybe if they want to...
young, studly, handsome
I do
Peter
sometimes
Clegg.
Like the idea of just bringing back old families and trying to say, let's get that name again.
Isn't this an interesting concept to think that, there is still the elephant in the room of the fact that Annie passed it to Betty. What if Peter Clegg gets a whiff of this and comes knocking on the door, going,
gosh.
"Well, what that could wouldn't that be really funny?
Maybe
if that was
he's going to be there in getting the Rovers back again,
going, look,
saving it from Waterford.
Yeah, sorry, Waterford. So you've got no right to buy this because it still technically belongs to the Clegg family." And
I don't think that's going to happen.
Peter Clegg, I'm here to save the day, and I'm also very handsome, and my character will be introduced as a bit of a ladies' man and a heartbreaker.
I could play Peter Clegg, you know.
Are you Welsh?
I can play someone who's 38, I reckon.
I reckon he should have been raised in Wales, just so you can practice your accent.
Right, I think we'll end it there. We've said all we can say about Gordon Clegg. I would love to watch more of him. We've only seen a handful of episodes with him in, but maybe one day we'll be able to watch a little bit more, and then we'll go, oh, I remember when we talked about that.
Well, you guys won't be there though, so
no.
Sorry.
Shall we go? Shall we end? Shall we
Thank
have
you,
our dinner?
Everybody,
Thank you
for listening to that. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you've got any memories.
If you are, unlike us, if you actually have any real genuine memories of Gordon Clegg.
I do remember the bit when he was with Lucille. I remember quite a lot.
In the train station.
He was only in 106 episodes. I'm going to say I've watched a percentage of those.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Like a full number.
Yeah, you've probably seen like maybe over 1% of his episodes.
I've seen probably I'd say 3%. I've seen
Gordon Clegg.
Yeah.
And so anyway, if you have got some memories and would like to share, please do, because we love that kind of thing.
Write in conversationstreet@gmail.com or find us on social media.
Yeah, do.